Today, we're going to talk about seismic reflection data revealing Mesozoic-to-Recent bottom current activity in the Browse Basin, offshore Northwest Australia. I'm Ricardo Pedreros, a third-year PhD student at Imperial College. This is a work in progress, so that what we are showing here is the preliminary and initial preliminary initial results of this work that we are conducting in the Browse Basin in Australia. Okay, so just to give us a bit of context, contourites are marine sediments that are deposited by thermohaline-induced deeper bottom currents. The presence, direction, and strength of bottom currents are sensitive to changes in basin geometry. Therefore, the related deposits will vary in terms of distribution, geometry, size, hence providing potential archive of basin evolution. Relatively few studies have been assessed the utility of ancient contourites as tape recorders of long-term basin evolution. In this specific study, we're going to use 2D seismic data from the Browse Basin to study the interaction between the marine currents and the tectonics. Okay, so as mentioned before, contourites are sediments, deposits, or substantially reworked by the persistent action of bottom currents. Here we have a classification of the contourites proposed and modified by Elda Miramontes in 2021. So she expressed here that we have changes in energy. So here we have low energy, and here we have increase in energy. And then we have in the lower part, we are going to have deposition energy, and then we have some sand deposition and then erosion. Bottom currents are those that are semi-permanent water flows capable of eroding, transporting, and depositing sediments. Okay. Okay, so the deposit of these ones we are going to use this later in order to see what we have done so far and why it is very useful to use this new classification proposal. So the area of study is located towards the northwest part of Australia. We have here like about 75,000 kilometers of 2D and 3D seismic. As mentioned before, this is a 2D, and that is called Browse 1998. And this area provides very good information about what we are trying to find and how they behave. Okay. So basically, what we're seeing here is a seismic line that is along the slope. And this one is here almost in the middle of the program, of the seismic 2D program. And as you can see, the coverage of the area, it behaves like a 3D, but it's 2D. The distance between the lines are quite high. This is between like 5 to 10 kilometers. In the middle is 10 by 10, and towards the sides is 5 by 10. So this is very important for us to take into account in order to map the curves that we are going to find in here. So as you can see from here, from this seismic line, we have different seismic sequences. So what we did is we tried to split or to interpret several seismic sequences inside the seismic line, and we found we have found 5 seismic sequences. We have differences between them. So for instance, the very low one is it has low to moderate amplitude, continuous to semi-continuous reflections, where it has an erosive base, as you can see from here. So the thickness varies between 200 and 800 milliseconds in two-way time. All the depths are going to be given in two-way time. Also, S2 has also, we can split this one into different sequences. As you can see here, we have the limit that you can trace the limit between inside this sequence along the whole 2D. In here, we have the second sequence. We have also 2 different responses. Like almost in the half of it, you can separate. And why we didn't split those? Because the behavior inside the subsequences are quite similar. So we left it as a whole sequence. Then we have the sequence number 3. This one has between 400 and almost 1200 milliseconds thickness. And as you can see, we can see some clinoforms, some Contourite responses, some very variated kind of deposits. And then we move to the S4. In this one, we have clinoforms between 500 milliseconds and 800 milliseconds thickness, and some of them are really, really affected by gullies. And the sequence number 5, that is the most in the surface one, we can have some contouritic deposit and subcontouritic responses there that have like 200 and 300 milliseconds thickness. So as I was telling you, what we did is we split the seismic sequences in five. We split the signal in 5 sequences. Then we start like screening the whole area. And for instance, here we find something that we can interpret as furrows. As you can see, the shape here of the reflector is located in the S3, and it can have similarities to this one here. So in this specific case, we are talking about eroding surfaces. Eroding in the eroding part of the classification proposed by Miramontes. This one is quite huge. This has like almost 20 kilometers width in here, and it has almost 800 milliseconds thickness. And you can see from here also that the surface is quite eroded there, and we have some clinoforms that are being gullied in here, and also something that is quite interesting for us as describing Contourites. And in here we try to find if we are recognizing another erosion feature that are called modes in here. So you see almost the similar feature in here, and we are trying to continue describing all of them in all their deposits, so we can identify how the current has moved and how the behavior has changed. Similar we did with all these lines. Previously, what I showed was along the slope. Now we're going to show crossing the slope, so we see differences in here, and we did the same treatment. We walk and we describe the 5 seismic sequences. We follow all of them. In some specific areas, we have some paleo highs that eroded or didn't allow the deposition of the sequences. However, we try to continue the interpretation along the whole basin and the whole 2D program, and it was consistent the presence of the seismic sequences. So in here, what we do was the same. Again, we try to infer the presence of contouritic deposits, and here we have something that is defined as cluster drift. You can see here the limit of the sequence, and then you have something here that has almost 7 kilometers width. We're going to talk about that later. So as I was telling you, we interpreted the seismic sequences and try to find all the contouritic seismic responses, whether we have there. But okay, that's one part of it. But then what something that we need to mention here is that sometimes it's not that easy to continue and track all the bodies, because the distance of the lines, as I mentioned before, they have like 10 kilometers between lines. So sometimes it's quite difficult to follow all of them. However, we are doing a very high job to track them and to map them in the whole area. So after we have described, have interpreted the seismic sequences, have followed all the geobodies that we found, the contouritic deposits that we have found, we take what Miramontes proposed in 2021, and then we try to find some similar deposits in our area. So as you can see from here, this is like a small summary of the many facies that we have found. I'm going to talk today about just 5, and here you see where are they located inside our 2D program. So for instance, the first one is located almost in the middle of the sequence, and it's interpreted as a cluster drift. So as you can see, this is the shape of the original of the proposed classification, and this one is the one that I showed 2 slides ago. So as you can see the shape in here and how the behavior is quite similar to that one. The seismic response is between 8 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds thickness for this specific one. Here in the second one, that is located towards the south part, we can find some detachment mounted drifts. Here we have the response over the limit of the sequence. So we see some similarities with these ones, so that's why we decided to call it like that. This one has almost 5 kilometers width, and this one, I forgot to mention, this one is more than 20 kilometers width. The thickness is almost 60 to 90 milliseconds. Okay, these ones, we can interpret these ones as sediment waves, because you see the pattern here. So in some cases, you can see, okay, those are furrows, but what happened here is that you can see that all the reflectors are following the same pattern. So in this specific case, for us, these are sediment waves. So this is 2.5 kilometers. So this is again more than 20 kilometers of extension. In this one specific, in the channel related drift, we found many of them inside the area, and they are located towards the southernmost part of this program. And as you can see from the original interpretation, the shapes have very good similarities to them, and the thickness is for almost between 40 and 120 milliseconds. Okay. So this one is the last one that I want to show today, and is towards the northernmost part that I have worked today. And we have something that is called a sandbank. And as you can notice, we have some similarities in there. The surface is eroded. And for instance, in this one has 5 kilometers width, and the response is between 30 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds. Why I'm giving those intervals? Because as I was saying from the beginning, from in some lines, the thickness is very low because it's the apical part of the geobody, and the thicker part will be the center of it. So what I'm trying to say is how they change. I just want to show this again in order to show you how where are these deposits located. For this, just 5. But we have around 20 of the same geobodies described, and they cover the whole area. So what we are doing now is trying to connect all of them. So what we're going to show here is something that we have found in our area and try to compare something that somebody else have found in other areas. So for instance, in here, we're going to talk about the Pianosa Contourite by Miramontes in 2016. And she's showing here, I'm going to talk just about the contourated responses. So she's showing here the mode and also the separated mounted drift. In here, we'll try to describe or try to unveil the same patterns, and we see that they are quite correlatable. And the idea is try to maintain the same spirit in our description, and try to actually find the proper deposits. In here also from Miramontes in 2018, this is from Mozambique. So she's showing here, they are showing here the sandbank and also some dunes. Here, as I was saying, we are seeing some abrasion in here and some similar things that we can call sandbank. This sandbank was shown before in the page description. So basically, this is what we have done so far. We have described in this area. We have mapped the sequences. We have found the facies. We have described the facies. We are doing the mapping of those sequences. We are tidying the age of the seismic sequences with well information. And the idea is to continue working in this one. I forgot to mention that I am also working in the Browse Basin, but in this case, I was just trying to show what I have done in the Browse Basin. So the conclusions are the Browse Basin have presence of deep marine deposits and are characterized by finding of Contourites and scour deposits distributed along the seismic sequences found in the 2D seismic data. Browse Basin have 5 seismic sequences along the depicted area. They have differences in the thickness as I show. Sometimes they have very low thicknesses between 200, and sometimes they are really thick that they have more than 1200 milliseconds. Within the described seismic sequences, we interpreted large to small geobodies interpreted as contouritic or scour deposits. Their thickness fluctuate, as I mentioned before, between 20 milliseconds to 120 milliseconds. And the change in thickness is telling us that there are many factors controlling the deposits, such as marine current velocity, energy, sediment supplies, oxidants, paleomorphology, among others, hence showing different responses in shifting contouritic deposits. So what we are, as I was mentioning, what we are trying to do is continue working with this data, extracting generated geobody maps try to follow how far the contouritic bodies are going to reach, and that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for this very interesting documentation of the deposits offshore Australia.